A letter in the mail says Dominion's coming through, and they want us to think there's nothing we can do. Hard to believe, but we found out it's true. They want to build a 42-inch pipeline. We don't want your pipeline. We don't want your pipeline. We'll take the sunshine, the water, and wind. We're gonna put a stop sign on Dominion's pipeline. Go tell your neighbors, go tell your friends.
The ACP drew up its plan and then amended its plan. And both plans had it coming directly through us, through historic resources, through registered landmarks, through floodplains, through scenic historic districts. So it was making a tremendous impact, and I'm here to tell you that there were a lot of focus on defending against the pipeline, but I think the Rockfish Valley Foundation has never wanted to claim the major impact it had on it, but I'm here to tell you that we did. It all starts with who has a seat at the table. FERC builds the table. They are required by federal law to bring in the State Department of Historic Resources to complete a task. And the task is to evaluate if any resources are going to be affected. And that's where you come back to knowing what your resources are and having them get listed so that you've got your weapon, so to speak, in your arsenal. FERC then says, you've got Dominion, for example, you've got to check some boxes before you can begin your project. One of them that you must check is the 106 process. And the state is the one, Roger Kirchen at Virginia, Roger convened some parties. Well, who are those parties going to be? And that's where it's really difficult. The feds don't like naming consultants to a project. They don't like having people sit around a table. They want it all done through e-library, uploads of documents. They don't want people communicating and making it clear where it stands. You always have a representative of your local government. Nelson Board of Supervisors, Ernie Reed. Before him, it took a number of years, Connie Brennan. We had leadership at that level. The Historical Society was given a seat at the table, not a vote. The Rockfish Valley Foundation was given a seat at the table. Again, not a vote. No documents required our signature. The deal had to be struck between the state, FERC, and the developer, Dominion. We were fortunate in that we had done our historic district, and archaeology sites have a different presence than a historic farm or historic structures. Archaeology is a little different. It's identified, but it's not one of the pushes for the district. It's archaeology, it's not historic properties. And we did have all of that. We had many registered properties, some that the easement would go right through, and some that was in a view shed. But the archaeology site itself was cut through in two places on the plans. And then Dominion, it was such a big project. Dominion made mistakes that they weren't even aware of until landowners pointed them out to them. And that's going to happen in any project that's a couple hundred or 2,000 miles, whatever the length of the thing is going to be. It's just too big for everybody to have every tree in dissection. And we learned that somebody at Dominion said, you've got to find another route because the law says find another route. The guy who drew the route for Dominion, I got to know him. He's a very nice man. Very nice man, did an excellent job for what he was told to do. But he drew it through a conservation easement. He didn't even know that a place like the Virginia Outdoors Foundation had conservation easements that he was going through. He did not even know that he was going through a historic farm, registered not for the house and the outbuildings, but for the farm. 250 years of agriculture. This exists all over the state of Virginia. Look and understand as best you can your options for putting on easements through people like the Virginia Outdoors Foundation or other holders of easements. Look at registering a historic place that's not going to say your door has to be brown and not green. They don't control you that way. It's not a penalty, it's a protection.
Down in our area, some of the friends of Nelson, they came down there, we went through the areas down there, we found out some cemeteries that own the properties down there that was unidentified. We don't know who the graves were or anything, because we wanted to find out in their community about the African American cemeteries, because we didn't want them to disturb them. Some other people saying, well, you're not going to win because the corporations have too much money, that you can't beat these big corporations. And a lot of people were fearful of that you're going to lose. But I thank God when people stand together and fight together, then, you have to stick together and fight together in order to get something done. And also on 56, they had the St. Ephraim Baptist Church, which is the oldest black church in Nelson County. They wanted to come right by that church also. And they offered this church some money, but they wouldn't take it because of the historical of the church. And they eventually moved it from over there.
I do think that when I was looking at some of the articles from the early times, and there was a big interest in the historical impact on when John and the Warminster Historic and the African American, the Native American. That was something that really got some traction in the media stories. So, and the company, because they did change the route. But then, of course, they just put it on the other side of 56 to other African-American families. But they did pay attention.
Warminster was settled by my ancestors in the 1700s, and had been. But it wasn't. It was around the same time that the Historical Society became the sponsor of, and I became the applicant for, the Warminster Rural Historic District, which that was one of the reasons that I met you guys too, because we were all kind of moving in this, doing whatever we could to, figure this out. And I think it is important to be mindful of the history of our ancestors, our Native American ancestors, our black ancestors, all of whom are kind of still, hanging around there, in the area. And it's important to understand the power of that. But it's not incumbent on somebody who wants to put a pipeline through to do the research for you. You have to do the research and get it to them.
Well, a letter in the mail says Dominion's coming through, and they want us to think there's nothing we